So you're bored. Maybe you're avoiding Subnautica 2 because of spoilers and you're feeling a little left out, or you just finished up a playthrough and aren't really sure what to do next. Whatever the reason, you want to play Subnautica but just can't quite figure out what to do. Luckily, that's where this video comes in. I've played this game quite a bit over the years, and believe it or not, I too have dealt with the occasional bout of boredom. So today, I thought I'd share a list of things that I typically think about when I'm trying to get re-inspired to play the game, ranging from brief time killers to things that can occupy you for weeks or even months. So without further ado, here are 29 things that you can do when you're bored in Subnautica. Now, there's a lot of different things I'm going to touch on in this video, and a good chunk of it's going to involve starting a new save file, which seems to be everyone's go-to strategy when they're trying to get back into a game. But before we just throw in the towel and start over, there's a lot of scenarios where I'd actually recommend not just abandoning your previous save. Now, if you haven't played the game in ages and barely remember what you were doing, that's one thing. But if you have a relatively recent save where you got far, and you're strictly wanting to do stuff in the late game, it might actually be worth just carrying on, since you're gonna spend ages just getting back to where you already were. Should you choose to carry on, one of my favorite things to do after getting cured is fully upgrade all of my tools and vehicles. This usually involves swapping out all of the batteries and power cells for their ion variants, which is actually way cheaper and easier than you might think, provided you have a prawn suit with a drill arm. And I also like to try and get all my favorite upgrades for the Seamoth, prawn suit, and Cyclops. This basically just puts you in a really good position to be able to pursue any other endeavors, since you'll have all the best upgrades for navigation and defense, and you won't have to worry about running out of power anytime soon. Now that you've got some proper equipment, it's time to get some other upgrades. You probably got most of the essential blueprints on your way to beating the game, but chances are there's at least a few things you're missing. So hop in a vehicle of your choice and go get them. In doing so, you'll probably have to visit a lot of different locations, so while you're out and about, you can use this as an opportunity to try and visit every life pod and wreck. Even though you probably won't get something new from every single one, it can still be a lot of fun to visit the ones you aren't super familiar with, and for me at least, it really helps rekindle that feeling of exploring the unknown that Subnautica is oh so good at. Blueprints aren't the only things you can get in wrecks and life pods though. You probably know there's a good amount of posters, lab equipment, and other knickknacks scattered around the Aurora, but there's also a fair few wrecks and even a life pod with some as well. So if you're looking to get some really cool little trinkets, as well as subtle reminders of just how many places you've been, consider trying to collect them all. Once you've gotten all kinds of cool trinkets, well, you're probably going to want a place to display them all, and if you've still been living in that old starter base, then now's the perfect time to upgrade. Building a mega base is one of my absolute favorite things to do in this game, and you can easily spend 5+ hours on just this alone. Take your Cyclops and prawn suit and venture across the map, mining up all the resources you could ever possibly need. And while you're at it, make sure to be on the lookout for any potential base locations. There are so many cool spots to build in this game, and it feels like every single one of them has something unique to offer. So explore around, watch some YouTube videos if you're looking for a little inspiration, and really dial in where you'd like to live. Then head there with your Cyclops and build that dream base with everything you could ever possibly need. If you still feel like building after that, well, you don't have to just stop with one base. If there's certain spots on the map that you tend to frequent, you can build a few outposts for sleeping, recharging batteries, and filling up on food and water. If you're looking for something with a little more style, you can go to any spot with a Reaper, Ghost, Sea Dragon, or Sea Emperor and build yourself a Leviathan observatory. These not only look really cool, but are a great way to gain some free exposure therapy if there's a creature you're particularly scared of. If one or two Leviathans isn't extreme enough for you, you might want to try building in the Void. Building here, especially with any kind of large base, is really a unique experience, since you have to constantly stun or despawn the ghosts in order to go outside and actually build, and it's something I recommend everyone try at least once. Another fun thing is to collect every plant and creature and display them all in one spot. This will get you out and exploring loads of different spots across the map, and aside from just looking cool, it also serves a practical purpose, giving you an easy source of all the plants, fish, and creature eggs for any future projects. And if you haven't cannibalized them for resources yet, You can turn any existing bases that you no longer use into sort of abandoned bases by flooding them, cutting the power, and removing any plants, which I think is a really cool way to add some extra lore to your world. But maybe building bases isn't really your thing and you want more of a proper challenge. Try and fill out the entire PDA, or at least as much as you can without using a guide. To get the scans for the hostile leviathans, it can also be fun to try and take out one of each. And while I probably wouldn't recommend doing this on your main save, since it can make large swaths of the map pretty boring, killing all of the leviathans is still an option. But I think an even bigger flex than killing leviathans is trapping them, and I can personally attest that closing up the cage after you trap one of these guys is one of the coolest feelings in the game. Maybe you do feel like a fresh start is warranted though, and in that case, I'd recommend changing up how you play the game, and that usually comes in the form of some sort of challenge. If you want something very simple, try basing in a new location, preferably one outside of the main shallows. Not only will you get to experience the game from a completely new environment, but it also changes other things, like what wrecks and blueprints are close by, and what materials and power sources are easy to get. Alternatively, try changing up what wrecks you use, and if you're like me and always use the same few, consider just banning those altogether. This will force you to visit areas and wrecks you're not nearly as familiar with, which, as mentioned earlier, can really help you rekindle that feeling of exploring the unknown, along with changing both the timing and order that you get the blueprints, which can spice things up all on its own. And even something as simple as changing what Lost River entrance you use can do wonders for refreshing that part of the game. You can also just outright ban certain items as well. Beating the game without building a base, using vehicles, and surfacing are all really common ones that people seem to enjoy, and the potential for this is honestly endless. You can restrict yourself from visiting different biomes, eating different kinds of food, maybe you're only allowed to get certain types of resources from certain areas, or only use the worst blueprint spots, and you can even restrict certain control inputs. Really, if you can think of a challenge like this and it sounds interesting, go for it. Another thing that can be done on its own or intertwined with any of these things is hardcore mode. This will force you to play a lot safer, and since there's no rolling back to your previous save if something bad happens, it makes the prospect of something like a Reaper destroying one of your vehicles a lot more terrifying. If restriction challenges aren't doing it for you, it might be time to start physically changing the game. Obviously, everyone's first thought when they hear that is going to be mods, but I realize there's a lot of people that play on console and mobile that don't have access to them. So before we get to those, I want to talk about console commands. These are available to everyone through various means, and there's a surprising amount you can do with them. Ever wanted to do a playthrough in perpetual darkness? Set the time to night and use this command to make time pass 1,000 times slower than normal. Some other fun ones are the speed command, which is pretty self-explanatory, but more difficult than you might think. There's the damage multiplier command, which can make everything deal and take a lot more damage, and the insta-give command takes this to the extreme, making everything that can take damage die in a single hit. And of course, if you just want more danger, you can always just spawn in a bunch of extra creatures beforehand using the free cam and spawn commands. Another massive part of this game that I'm personally very interested in diving into is speedrunning. There's a ton of different categories out there, so you're bound to find something you like, and even if you're not directly competing for a world record, it can still be fun to learn new glitches, strategies, and track your progress as you get better and better. If you're really looking to change the game though, mods are probably the way to go. This is admittedly an area of the game that I'm a lot less familiar with, but if you're looking for bigger mods, I've heard Red Plague, Return of the Ancients, and Prototype Expansion are all very good. And we can't forget about the classics of Randomizer and Death Run. And then there's the literal thousands of smaller mods that cater to basically every type of playstyle you could possibly have. Just browse the Nexus website for a bit, or check out one of the Last Bacon's many mod showcase videos. You're bound to find something fun. Should you be lucky enough to have friends that play Subnautica, there's plenty of things you can do with them too. The Subnautica Nitrox mod exists, allowing you to do a somewhat stable form of multiplayer. You can never go wrong with a few games of bingo or lockout. Archipelago is really easy to set up, and it's essentially a cross-game randomizer, compatible with a ton of different games, so your friends don't even need to have Subnautica for it to work. And while it's not in the game itself, Frosty's Geonautica is loads of fun in both single and multiplayer. While we're on the subject of community creations, I'd be amiss if I didn't mention the 2 escape rooms made by Salvner. Yes, we have escape rooms in the underwater fish game, and as someone who's had the pleasure of playing both, I can confirm that they're a lot of fun. And finally, if you haven't already, go play Below Zero. Look, I know people love to dunk on this game, and I'll admit it has its faults, but overall it's still a really good game. Even if you forget the story and just view it as new biomes and creatures, it's still well worth it in my opinion. And considering almost everything I've mentioned up to this point also applies to Below Zero, if you end up liking the game, you've effectively doubled the amount of stuff there is to do. So if you haven't ever played it, I would highly recommend giving it a go. Now, those were the main things that came to my mind when thinking about fun stuff to do, but I'm only one person at the end of the day, so if there's anything fun that you like that I didn't mention, drop it in a comment down below and we can try to build up a list of even more fun stuff. And while you're down there, consider leaving a like and maybe even subscribing. Anyways, that's all from me for now, folks. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you all again very soon.